You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody, that music means it is time once again for a little program I like to call Around These Parts, the Crypto Rundown, the show where we break down all the fun stuff happening on the crypto side of the fence, from a vol, from a volume, from an unusual activity, from any sort of derivatives perspective, as well as, of course, the spot and everything else we could mix in there. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the Options Insider Radio Network. And, you know, listeners are coming into the tail end of the year. My favorite time of the year, because not just the holidays, but of course, I say that sarcastically, because of course it is flu season. It always runs and wreaks havoc with our network and indeed with our guest schedule. And of course, this program seems to suffer from it more than most, because so many of our guests beam in from so many far-flung locales. And so we had a guest and indeed a co-host both get struck down at the very last minute by viral plagues. So you get just a dose of me today here on the program. I want to make sure you guys still get your crypto rundown here, because there is some fun stuff popping off in the otherwise quiet marketplace right now. So let's get going with a little bit of the old Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, this segment where pretty much the name says it all. We break down the crazy world of all things Bitcoin, a.k.a. the dominant cryptocurrency out there. Come into Showtime. I guess it depends on your frame of reference, how you're feeling about it. Right now, you can feel a little happy, I guess, compared to last show, because you finally have a little bit of upside over there net in the crypto marketplace. We're up, we were about 160 handles, have given up a little bit of that leading into the show. Now up about 145 handles from where we were this time last week. So I suppose if you look at it in a vacuum, just in that past week, it has been a decent week. We hit a high of not quite 7,600, about 75 and 3/4 or so on last Friday. And then the low of the week, a little bit right around 7,100 or 7,130 or so on the 3rd of December. So a little bit tighter range this week than perhaps we've seen in previous weeks. Of course, if you look a little bit farther, maybe your overall outlook not quite as optimistic. Of course, everyone's crunching the numbers for November and indeed for year to date on all things Bitcoin, and it hasn't exactly been a rosy picture. We saw, of course, November, a bit of a rough month. Bitcoin finishing pretty much down about 20% for this past month. Of course, there was a lot of turmoil over the course of this month. Some people may be laying the blame at some of this recent sell-off on the over hysteria, shall we say, coming out of the comments we saw out of China. Of course, the Chinese president talking up blockchain. A lot of people in the virtual and the currency space and the cryptocurrency space saying, oh, great, that means cryptos are back on in China. And state media was quick to put the kibosh on that, saying, yeah, not so much. We're interested in the blockchain technology. That doesn't mean we're interested in trading and going back into trading virtual currencies. So that pretty much seemed to cut the legs out of all of the rally out there. Of course, you saw the big rally up to not quite 10,000, about 95 and a quarter early November, and then that was, of course, in the media aftermath of those remarks coming out of China. Then we saw Bitcoin just get the legs cut off from under it. By the end of the month, it was trading down nearly, actually 3,000 handles from that high, about 65 and a quarter on the 25th of November. So a topsy-turvy month, I should say. Obviously, it managed to finish a little bit stronger there, but a turbulent month. We highlighted, of course, all that volatility out there on this show. If you look back to over the course of this past year, again, frame of reference-wise, that kind of depends how you're looking at it. If you go all the way to the tippity top, which is maybe a bit of cherry picking, but some folks like to do that. Bitcoin was hit around not quite 14,000, about 13,879. That was back in June. And so we're off about 50% from those levels out there. So again, a little bit longer term, not exactly optimistic. And of course, if you go all the way back to right around 20,000, which was the all-time high back in Dece of 2017, right around that time frame, we're off about 60%. But again, let's not go that far back. Why should we? Why should we get dragged into the weeds out there? A lot of people also blaming the fact that we're kind of in this kind of just general malaise right now. Volume's kind of light and kind of thin out there in Bitcoin. They haven't really seen the next thing that's going to make the worm turn towards the upside. A lot of people are still reeling from all of this Chinese turmoil, and there hasn't been something else in the near term to really replace that. So thin volume, kind of light, overall net bearish sentiment, why we've seen things generally drifting down of late. Of course, this past week, at least a bit of a change of that, which may be a sign of things to come. Of course, we'll have to wait and see on that front. Let's go out to the volatility side. Of course, all these metrics, all this fun stuff brought to you courtesy of our friends over there in SKEW land. Actually, I used to say SK3W. They have now bought the proper URL, so it's just SKEW.com. Head on over there, click on all the data. It's a lot of cool stuff. I'd warn you, though, you can get lost in the weeds and a lot of the fun stuff that they have over there. The vol out there right now, 30-day realized, kind of unched right around 54%, almost exactly where it was this time last show, which has kind of been interesting, a little bit of a theme we've seen in the realized of late. Again, that's a frame of reference issue. Let's go out to the implied right now. That's down also a little bit. Hasn't been a heck of a lot going on over the course of the past week. A 300, 400-point range in Bitcoin. It's pretty quiet compared to what we've seen even in recent weeks. So not surprising, we're seeing the vol kind of stay the same or tick in a little bit. It's down about 3% right now, from about 63% down to 60%. Options volume, we like to use that 30 million barometer as an active day, and we haven't really seen that many of those. We saw one over the course of the past week on the 5th, where we got over to 45 million on Deribit, and that was pretty much it. No spikes over 100 million like we've seen in recent weeks and stuff, so not a lot lighting it up over there from a volume perspective. Looks at the big prints out here. We've been talking a lot of Dece risk reversals and collars and put spreads out here. That's kind of been the same narrative we're seeing here this week. The biggest print of the week came on the 3rd with about another 250 lot of what looks like, I guess, a risk reversal, if you wanted to parse this a little bit here. It was the Dece 6,500 put against the 8,500 call. So a bit of a tight little range there. Not bad. Not quite 1,000 points in each direction, a little more, a little less, depending on where we're printing right now. But interesting levels, maybe, to put on a collar on Bitcoin. If he gets below 6,500, maybe this guy's saying he's out. If he gets above 8,500, he wouldn't mind letting some of his positions go. We don't know if it's against any underlying, but we can usually intuit that when we see this kind of size. And that's one of the bigger, if not the biggest trades we saw going up here this week. They were both done, I should note, when Bitcoin was around 73.40, close to it, 73.35 in that level. So bear that in mind when you're seeing these trades. Not pretty close to mid-market on both of those, which is kind of interesting. The vol out there, term structure, again, we said not a lot going on from a vol perspective, so the term structure pretty reminiscent of what we saw last show. The call to put also pretty much exactly unched, which is interesting, right around 51%. OI, though, not the case. OI is actually ticking up to about nearly 450 million. That's up from about 416 million this past show. And, of course, that's with the D6 contracts, which had a decent amount of open interest, around 6,000 plus contracts. That's gone. That's off the board. Yet OI still growing, which is kind of interesting. Worth noting, December still dominates the tape. That's where pretty much all of the open interest is. So DEES obviously growing enough to make up for the end of month DEES. They're making up for what's going away now in the weekly contrast. The biggest contract beyond DEES, you have to go out to March with not quite 11,000 contracts open out there. Let's move on to the futures. As you might expect, kind of a quiet day and pretty much a quiet week over there on the CME Bitcoin futures front. Coming into showtime, you saw not quite 3,000 contracts on the tape for the CME contract. Again, that's a 5X coin, so you do the math out there for what that means for overall volume. Overall volume as well, last week kind of light. The biggest day was the 4th with about 9,000 contracts. So decent day, but the rest of the week kind of failing to live up to that. Of course, all eyes these days are on the BAKKT front as well for a variety of reasons. First off, I just love talking about one of my favorite Twitter accounts out there now, the BAKKT volume bot. All the people who have been asking us about BAKKT volume, what's going on with BAKKT, you should be following this account. It's just at BAKKTbot. I don't believe they are affiliated at all with BAKKT. They just like to tweet out the volume. And so coming into today's show, according to the BAKKTbot, we have about 841 contracts, because remember, that's a one-to-one contract. So 841 Bitcoin trading, that means 841 contracts going up. And they're roughly 34% of, they think, of what they expected for the volume going up on their current target is about 1,780. So they're at about a third of that, a little more than that right now here as of showtime. Of course, the big news and a couple of big stories come out of BAKKT land. First off, their CEO, no longer their CEO. It's been rumored for some time in the derivative space that their CEO might be headed to the Senate. She is, of course, married to Jeff Sprecher, who runs ICE, and there's been rumors for some time in the derivative space that he's been seeking a senatorial seat for her down in Georgia, where ICE is based. And that has indeed come to pass. She has now been appointed, I believe, the interim senator over there. Going to have to run again, and I think next year to actually win the seat by election. Right now, she's been appointed there. So, of course, no longer can't be the CEO of BAKKT and a U.S. senator. So we'll see how that plays out with the firm. Of course, the other big development from our perspective, the options are live today. BAKKT listing options on their cash-settled futures out there. So a lot of people have been looking forward to that. We don't really have much in the way of volume to report yet, so stay tuned for that. Maybe next show we'll have more to sink our teeth into from that perspective. But still, a lot going on from a news front in BAKKT land. Of course, one of the reasons BAKKT going live right now with the options is because they're trying to beat their old friend CME to the punch. CME has said they're going live in January with their options. So we'll see if they have a month or so to generate some traction. Again, the future's not blowing the doors off, so kind of hard to expect a ton of options volume as a result. But we'll see. We'll see how all this plays out. And that's not enough Bitcoin options news for you. You want to go a little bit beyond the U.S. shores here. OKEX maybe, a Maltese crypto exchange announced they are also going to be launching options coming up next week on the 12th. And they're trying to use an aggregate of various platforms. Sounds like it's analogous to the CME Bitcoin reference rate to try to get fair settlement prices for their options. Again, I imagine a lot of that's going to be hard for our U.S. audience to get access to, but they are saying they're going to have what they're terming a suitability test. So kind of like we have here for most brokerage firms in the U.S. If you want to trade options, you need level 1, level 2, level 3 approval. Sounds like this OKEX may be trying to replicate that in obviously the, shall we say, less than regulated world of Bitcoin options. All right, it's time for us to keep on rolling now out into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, let's get out there to all things altcoins. Kick it off with the big dog in the altcoin space, a.k.a. ETH. Clear number 2 out there from a market cap and from an interest from you guys, from anecdotally, from looking at your feedback. Clearly, a number 2 for you is ETH as well. And, of course, from an overall derivatives perspective, That's where the most action is as well. Let's sink our teeth into some of what's going on in the options out here in the vol as well. Worth noting, ETH coming into showtime almost literally unched from where it was last week. It was right around 148 last show, and it's pretty much right around 148 again at this show. So an uncharacteristically quiet week. Again, getting back to what I've been saying, most crypto kind of thin, kind of light these days, and that's being reflected out there in ETH. And as a result, it's kind of unched here on the week. Vol, same story out there in ETH options land, right around a 58%. That's the realized. Implied is actually ticking up a little bit. 30-day implied is up to about 75, almost 76%. That's up from about 71.5% on our last show. So ticking up a little bit. What isn't ticking up is the call to put. Remember I said for a while now, since we've been tracking it, it's been heavily call dominated, 91, 92% on the call side. Come off quite a bit this week, down to about 61%. Maybe some of that having to do with the big prints we saw out here this week. Some pretty sizable prints. Looks like a lot of that, actually all this going up today. We saw two sizable prints of what appears to be a DECE 150 straddle. That's going up 500 times earlier today, then 500 times again. So 150 call and 150 put. Listeners, if you're not familiar with the options terminology there, going up when ETH was a little bit higher, right around 150.30, and then a little bit again later on when it was at around 149.5. Obviously, ETH has come off now. It's down to about 148, so a little bit higher when this print went up. So that was pretty much the at-the-money straddle at the time. So total of 1,000 of these going up, which is pretty sizable for ETH, and obviously what has caused the put open interest to kick up, a.k.a. the call OI to come down as a result. So someone opening some sizable positions here, and it looks like it is a straddle. It could be a synthetic, but that would be an interesting choice out there in ETH land where the options are a little bit thinner, a little bit wider. Kind of hard to get good fills that way. You're probably better off doing the underlying than going for a synthetic. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is probably a straddle out here, and that is by far the biggest trade. We also did see, though, a 500 lot going up earlier in the week. March looks like a vertical as well. March 200, 240 call vertical. Also going up. 500 seems to be the magic number out there in ETH, which is pretty sizable for a pretty small name. So those are the big prints we saw going up out there. OI, as you might expect now, ticking up a little bit. Of course, this doesn't reflect this paper, the paper I mentioned that went up this morning. That's obviously going to add more to this. So right now it's ticked up to about 41 million from 39 million. Most of that's still aggregated out there in DECE. Bitcoin, ETH, doesn't matter where you're looking from an options perspective. Everybody loves DECE, it seems like, right now. And also 600 strike, still where the action is. I got a feeling after today's paper is factored in, going to see 150 strike. Maybe not quite taking the lead, maybe, but getting up there quite a bit, which should be interesting to watch. Speaking of getting up there, our old friend Ripple, a.k.a. XRP, managing to tick up just a little bit, up to about 22.5 cents from the shy of 22 cents where it was last week. Is this the bullish resurgence of XRP that everyone's been asking for and looking for? Kind of hard to read into that tea leaf at this point. It doesn't seem like it. XRP, as everyone who's followed it knows, has struggled. I know a lot of you like it. A lot of you write in about it. But this week is not the magic week for XRP to explode above 30, and all the woes are behind it. Litecoin also off a little bit this week, down to about 44.75. An uncharacteristically quiet week, only off about half a buck. That's not much. If you know a Litecoin, it can move a lot more than that. Bitcoin Cash also pretty quiet, kind of reflecting an overall theme here in the crypto space of relatively quiet, thin markets, only down about $4 from this time last show. And all right, we got a little bit of time. Let's see if we can squeeze in some of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, let's do it really quickly here to wrap up our quick hit crypto rundown here. Let's see what you guys have on the brain. Let's start off a little bit of love here from LJAC. LJAC says, thanks for talking about altcoin like VERGE and others. You guys rock. Keep this show rolling. Well, thank you, LJAC. No, you rock. All you guys who listen rock. We know a lot of you like the fact that we talk about some of those other coins out there, other currencies out there. So we definitely will keep that up because you're right. It is a pretty broad market. It's fun to explore. We, of course, had those folks on from the VERGE currency. It seemed like a lot of you liked that one last week. A few of you chiming in here. Let's look at a couple others. Mark Me was in our chat on the show saying, hey, what do you think about the current privacy coin structure? Are you interested in this swizzle? That swizzle with sticks was, of course, the handle of our guest, Lloyd, from the Verge Currency last week. I'll have to forward this one on to him. But it sounds like a lot of you were intrigued, too lazy to debug, saying also she's a fan of his and a fan, indeed, of the Verge Currency. Seeing your comments on that show, a lot of you like the fact that we are bringing on other ones outside of your Bitcoins and your ETH. Of course, those dominate the space. And we have done that before. We've had the gaming tokens and others. So we like, with the altcoin universe in particular, try to highlight some fun stuff that may not be on your radar, but is still interesting and could certainly come to dominate the tape here in the future of all things altcoin. All right, unfortunately, listeners, like I mentioned, that's going to bring it to a close here on this flu-shortened episode of the Crypto Rundown. We'll be back again next week with some fun guests. I think I can confirm some of them have been rescheduled for next week, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to talk a lot about Bitcoin volatility. That was the plan for today. We'll get more into it on the show next week, I promise you. And on behalf of all of our guests who are struck down, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for continuing to listen, continuing to drive new listeners to the show. Keep those reviews, keep all that stuff coming, because it helps people discover the show, particularly for this, which is a relatively new one. We love to see all the new listeners, all the new fans of the network coming in from so many far-flung locales that are so far outside of our traditional options meccas here in the U.S. of, your New Yorks and Chicagos, and even outside like your Londons and everywhere else. We love all you folks too. But so many new faces, new ears coming to the network. It's always fun to see. So keep that coming. If you like what you hear, leave a review in your platform of choice to help the new flood of listeners continue to discover the show. And we'll see you back here next week for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.